Right, as I said, back. So, where did we get the? Yeah, I drew the entire schematics for the board. And again, I'm glad I did, because this is a typical David John Powell design, I think. He was an incredibly smart guy back in the day that did a lot of work for JPM, Meigei, people like that. So, system clock. U6 there. Those two capacitors, resonator, those two resistors. It's just a basic ceramic resonator oscillator. And all it does is you get a pulse out of pin 2 and it gets buffered through pin 3, 4, 5 and 6. Smoothed a little bit by C3 to take out transients, and then you get clock pulse to the entire system. Sometimes on revision 2 cards you'll find the clock pulse comes out of pin 4, not pin 6. Mostly pins on these revision 1 cards here, pin 6 is your clock. Now the reset circuit. I drew this before a few weeks ago, but I made a couple of mistakes, so I drew it again. That there is this. You've got D3, which is a voltage limiter diode. It just drops the voltage a wee bit. You ZN 404, which is a precision voltage reference. It's not a diode. It's marked as one, but it's not. It's a 2.5V precision voltage supply. And all it does is it takes 5V in, about 4.6, and I'll put about 2.5 volts out at that point there. Now, although it says precision voltage reference, in practice usually I measured at about 1.9 or something like that. But those two there and that there form a voltage divider, which biases this Q4 on. You turn Q4 on, you pull voltage away for the base of Q5 and Q3. Q3 is a Q3 is a switch basically to connect your supply rail to VRAM and turn it off again. When there's no power going to the board, the battery is supplying the RAM. When there's power going to the board, this transistor's on, and the RAM's being supplied by the main voltage. Q5 here is part of the reset interlock, and it also forms part of the RAM select circuit. I'll show you why later on. As long as there's power going to the board, current's driven away from here, which sets this to 0 volts, which biases this transistor on. It's a PNP, so it's biased by voltage not being there. So if this is at 0, the main supply rail goes through to pin XC10 on the edge connector. Pin C10 the edge connector, the X is for the edge connector. You've also got C13 here, which is off by its own. It's just a power smoother. Now you notice this here, R4 and 6 on RAM CPU drawing. That's these two here. These two form a really crafty part of the design, and again it's a part that will get a lot of people confused. A lot of people think these are the RAM select transistors. Well, they are, but they're not. They don't work in the way you expect them to. I'll show you. So talk about the Atari style CPU schematics. Just draw a block diagram style with all the various pins marked out. Now, this is how Atari done it back in the day. You've got your data bus high and low, and all I've done, D0 to D7, go for the RAM to the CPU, on U2, U3, D0 to D7, go to RAM CPU, but the thing to remember is U2, D0 to D7 here, go to D8, D15 on U1, and on U3, D0 to D7, go to D0 to D7 on U1. The address bus, as I explained earlier, on the RAM it's A0 to A12, and it goes to A1 to A13 on the CPU. Remember, bit A0 is not used. And you've got various connections out here going to the edge connector. Some go to resistor network RP2, which is here. You see I've got them marked out. RP2 pin 9, for example, RP2 pin 6, RP2 pin 8. That's just this there. It's a 9-pin cell pack. You get pin 1, which is supplying 5 volt, and then the rest are on there. Pin 1's at the top and 9's at the bottom. I made a mistake there with the whole pin. It's connected to B23 on the edge connector, but it doesn't connect to RP2. It connects to a transistor on the main board instead. Right, so it is fairly self-explanatory. If you can understand basic schematics, you'll understand what I'm going on about here. I mean, I'm not drawing hundreds and hundreds of separate lines. I'll just draw them as bus lines. So, what I was saying about back on here. Yeah. R4 and 6 and CPU. I'll show you. Okay. That's R4 there and R6 there. I forgot to write them down. Hold on. I've lost my pen now. I'm getting ahead of myself. R4, R6. You can see I'm no expert because sometimes I'm doing this video and finding out while I'm doing the video that I've made a couple of mistakes. But physically the diagrams are right. It's just I forgot to write one thing to them. So R4 and R6 are connected to Q1 and Q2 base. And what a lot of people think happens is the edge connector, the main board connects to the bases of these transistors to drive pin 20 in the RAM low, and that's not what happens. You'll see the bases of those two transistors are connected through R4 and R6 to the tie point in Q5. So when Q5 is on, these transistors are biased on all the time. And here's the crafty bit. It's the emitters that go to the edge connector. And it's one of the ASICs on the motherboard. Sorry, somebody came in and had to pause. It's the emitters that one of the ASICs on the motherboard drives the emitters of these transistors. And the reason they did that is because these aren't actually driving the transistors as selecting the outputs. The main board's doing that all by itself. These are a switch to disconnect the output enables from the main board when there's no main power or when the processor's stuck out of reset. If Q5 is turned off, like if I refer back to here, if that Q5 is turned off, or if there's a fault, or if something goes wrong with E2, or if there's low voltage going to the processor, say like 3 volts instead of 5 volts, whatever, and this Q5 isn't turned on, there'll be no voltage here at the bases of these, so Q1 and Q2 aren't turned on, and there's no way for the main board to connect to pin 20. So the RAM's basically disconnected for the rest of the main board. It's a bit of a failsafe to put in. Now in some cards, some later revision 1 runs and the revision 2 cards, they did something even weirder, which I'm still trying to figure out, so I haven't included it here. Now, the card I'm looking at for this schematic is an early one, a 2N3904, is what you'll find in position Q1 and Q2. But in later runs after that, they use the BC183. And then they use the BC183 the wrong way around in the board. You'll see the screen print on the board looks backwards compared to the way the transistor's put in. And it's not a mistake people have made when they're repairing them, it's a mistake they made at the factory. So I'll get back, I've still got to do a couple of tests to find out how the later revisions actually work. But the earliest revision, this is correct. And it's physically correct as well. It's how you'd expect it to work for what they're doing. It's quite a neat idea of that. So, that's the connection from CPU to RAM. And I'll put all these in a PDF as well, so you can look at them at your leisure. I mean, I'm not keeping these to myself. Anybody who's working on an impact card needs to have this. So now we know that. Here's the connections between U4, U5 and the CPU. You see again, some duplicated lines. I'm going to say I'm doing it Atari style. I don't just draw one part of the schematic and that's it. You'll see a couple of parts are duplicated, they feature more than once. But it's easier to read that way. I mean, okay, yeah, I'm showing a couple of lines that like a AVIC, UDS, LDS there, going to the edge connector there, and I'm showing a couple of the same lines here. But these are all the lines that are relevant to the RAM. And these are all the lines that are relevant to the PALs. You see why I've did it? It makes it easier to read. I mean, common sense dictates that if that connection's there, it's going to be there on the other schematic as well. It's going to have to be there for it to work. So the reason I did this for this is you'll check all your connections here first. Make sure the RAM's connected to the edge connector. I mean, that's, you see I wrote there, all RAM address and data lines appear at the card edge, refer to pinout. Well, of course they will, because the RAM's got to connect to the rest of the main board, and the address and data bus have got to go to the ROMs as well. Well, you're not going to get anywhere without being able to read the program. These are the ones connecting to the PALs. You see what I was saying there about U4, the 616. We're taking information from the main board, processor sending its function codes in, and then it's getting information back at the interrupt level. I mean, if you think about it, it just springs to mind that this is like a very, very advanced version of a TTL chip that used to be out back in the day called a 74148, a priority encoder. And this is a priority encoder, it's encoding interrupt priority. So it's just doing like a much more complex thing that it did back in the days of SRU and System 80. U5 to 603, as I said, that's just driving this line here. DTAG. All these lines are outputs. That's the only input line for this PAL to the processor. So, again, taking information in for the main board, it's synchronizing it with system clock so that DTAC appears at the right time in the cycle. I'm saying that this is, as I said, it's quite handy to have the user manual. I would say it's essential to have the user manual. The user manual gets you nowhere without actually knowing the pinout of things. So, that's for connections to PAL to CPU. Confused yet? I hope you're not. Because if you've got a basic understanding of schematics, then you'll know what I'm on about here. So, battery circuit. It looks a bit over complex, but it's actually quite simple. VCC supply goes into Q3 and comes out as VRAM. It goes down this resistor, through a pico fuse, through a jumper, and trickle charges the battery. That's when power's on. When power's off, this resistor doesn't matter. The power comes up instead, through D1 and out to VRAM. Now I said that's 2.4 volt there, but I think it's actually 3.6 volt we need. Yeah, it's probably a 3.6 volt battery, because this will take 0.6 volts off it. So if that was 2.4, you know that, yeah, it's a 3.6 volt battery, my bad. See, there I go again. I'll confirm that. I'll confirm that. See, it's late at night and I've only just recently finished these. Oh, the focus is gone now, hold on. Yeah. That's going to be a 3.6 volt battery, sorry about that. So, I'll tidy that up before I get to the PDF. These here, F1 fuse and J1 RAM clear. That jumper there is missing in nearly all the boards. It's bypassed out with a little wire loop. Be handy to put it back in, but because what it allows you to do is remove the power for the RAM when the board's off. and clear the RAM basically. And this fuse here is just if something weird goes wrong and you try and say this shorts out or this shorts out, this protects your battery from exploding, that fuse there. More often than not you find that fuse is blown, and sometimes as well you find it's missing. I would not recommend you just jump it out with a bit of wire. I would replace this. If you're going to use the battery, I would make sure that fuse is there. Because that's a very simple circuit, and it's very, very easy for this to short out or for that to go wrong and get too much current flowing down to your battery. But it's quite a nice little battery charge circuit. I'll change this now. Yeah, I'll change this. No, I'll change it in the PDF. So, move that out of the way. Out of pages. Where did I put the first part of the drawing? There. It's not there. It's not there. At the bottom. There we go. That's just for how all the capacitors connect. All the little, all these here, all these little decoupling capacitors. But there is one thing to remember: C9, C10 do not buzz to VCC. They don't buzz to the main supply rail. They buzz to VRAM. So if you need to check the continuity of these, they're pretty insignificant. More often than not, they'll always be there, because they just connect to pin 28 and pin 14 in the RAM. But if you're ever buzzing continuity, check them on the RAM, don't check them for the main supply. And that's all. That's it. That's the whole thing. That's the mystery impact. Well, solved. Well, not solved. I still got about 12 processor cards I need to work through, and people want to send me more. Probably going to stick this PDF up online. Lots of people want to send me one, but I hope instead of trying to send other people your cards, you try and fix them yourself. Because these machines are dying basically, and they're dying because of lack of knowledge, and hopefully I provided some knowledge there. So that's it for the minute, and well, bye for now.